I think culture is the essence of what allows us to scale. And as you just mentioned earlier, we are truly in the people business. I think every business is technically in the people business if you hire people and have employees. But we do that for a living. We have to supply employees to companies throughout the United States, and we want to make sure that we're matching talent, the right talent, with the opportunity that's given to us. But we have to emulate that behavior internally. We have to hire the best in talent. We have to know that we can do that for ourselves if we're going to be able to do that for our clients.
Welcome to Grow Think Tank. This is the one and only place where you will get insight from the founders and the CEOs of the fastest growing privately held companies. I am the host. My name is Gene Hammett. I help leaders and their teams navigate the defining moments of their growth. Are you ready to grow? You know that your core values are important to the growth of the company. Just like the mission and vision, all of those foundational elements are critical for your employees to know where you're going, how we interact together, what's expected of our culture and our people. And this is how we serve our customers. And through all that, we grow. But what might be missing is the pillars at which you grow those core values. How do we actually make people feel connected to the work? Those pillars are exactly what we're going to talk about in today's episode on the Growth Think Tank. My guest today is Aaron Grossman. He's the co-founder of the Talent Launch Network. They were on the Inc. list 7 times. They were number 3,878 this past year. But being on the list 7 times is impressive. The only 2 years he didn't make it in this journey were the years at which he had to re-establish the scale of the business and the strategy and pivot a little bit. We don't talk too much about the pivot today. We talk about some of the core foundational elements that he saw was missing, which was specifically the pillars. There'll be a link inside these pages so that you can go download the actual redwood tree diagram that he uses, and we explain what it is, how it's used inside the episode. We also look at the one defining moment that Aaron faced as a leader where he realized his ego was getting in the way. He became the bottleneck for the company. And in fact, he lost hundreds of thousands of dollars. We talk about that mistake inside this episode on the podcast. Now here's the interview with Aaron. Hi, Aaron. How are you?
Good. How are you doing today?
Fantastic. Excited to have another great interview with a fast growth leader like yourself.
Awesome. I appreciate you asking me to be here today.
Well, you've got a lot of experience starting a business in 2001. You've made the list. It was, we counted up 7 times the Inc. list. A couple of years of where you had to go back and pivot a little bit so that you could scale even faster. Over 100 million now. I would love for you to kind of kick us off with, tell us about the Talent Launch Network.
Yeah, the Talent Launch Network was actually probably my most recent pivot. We started that concept in 2016 off of the framework that we had built in 2001. So the Talent Launch Network is a nationwide network of independently operated staffing and recruitment firms that are under common ownership. So these are staffing companies throughout the country that are successful, that have been successful for many years in their communities or marketplace. And we actually become the succession plan for successful staffing companies that don't have one. So the founders have enjoyed the experience of having having a network like Talent Launch that acquires their company and maintains their brand identity in the communities that they've built their companies from. And we basically pull out the engine that they had, and we kind of put our Lamborghini engine into it. So it still looks and feels like the company that they've had, but everything inside it is different and it's optimized. We're basically an outsourced tech-enabled shared services platform that provides a lot of these services to these staffing companies that live in our network.
I love that concept because you're not just a staffing company, and it's probably allows you to grow and scale faster than your peers.
Yeah, it's definitely, from what we've gathered, to be a very unique concept in our industry. And I think as we tell the story, a lot of people can see how this can really scale significantly. Just within our industry, it's about $150 billion a year annually in the U.S., and there's 20,000 staffing firms in the United States. 99% of them do less than 50 million. 97% do less than 25 million a year in revenues. And most of those companies, I don't know if you're familiar with the Net Promoter Score, but there's a company that annually does a survey, a Net Promoter Score survey, that's called the Best in Staffing. This past year, the results came out a couple of months ago. The score, which 100 would be the best score you can get, the average score of how companies felt about our industry was a big old score of 4,
Oh,
which
wow.
down from 9 last year. So when you think about the concept that we've created, is that there's a lot of these our industry is so heavily fragmented, and people like the relationships of their community-based staffing firms, but a lot of these staffing firms aren't at the size and scale to really advance themselves from a resource perspective, to really drive the best technologies and the best out there to drive the greatest experience back to their customers, and so the score has been low for many years now, and so Talent Launch was really created and pivoted to solve for that.
Well, I want to get into the heart of why you've grown so fast. We talked about this before we got on the phone. We've done some research on the company with my team, but it really comes down to the culture and the people. You have a people, centric business, because that's who you believe in, hiring the right people for your clients. But inside the walls of your own company, why is culture so important to the success of the company?
Well, I think, if I were to use one word, it's scalability. I think culture is the essence of what allows us to scale. And as you just mentioned earlier, we are truly in the people business. I think every business is technically in the people business if you hire people and have employees. But we do that for a living. We have to supply employees to companies throughout the United States, and we want to make sure that we're matching the right talent with the opportunity that's given to us. But we have to emulate that behavior internally. We have to hire the best in talent. We have to know that we can do that for ourselves if we're going to be able to do that for our clients. And in 2001, when I started the company, I was 27 years old. I never really had I never woke up as a kid and said, I can't wait. My goal in life is to own my own business. That wasn't my track. I kind of fell into it because I got into this industry. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the fact that I could make money by actually helping people in a very tangible way. But when I had the opportunity to start my business, I didn't have this $1 billion goal or this $100 million goal. When I started it, it was really about building healthy relationships and doing really good work for my customers. And as that started to scale, and we started to get more than initially, when I started the company, I wanted to get 20 customers and to serve them really well. Well, next thing you know, I opened my eyes up 6 years later, and we've got 500 customers, and I had 30 employees at the time. And I'm thinking, like, how the heck did I do this? Like, literally, that's what I did. I'm like, how the heck did I do this? So I went on probably a 10 to 12 month learning of how I got there, and a lot of that really helped me understand what culture was. And I started to learn about missions and mission statements, and what your core values and what your vision is. And I started to really kind of learn how I got there by learning who I was through designing what our culture ultimately was meant to be. And when I started to get the framework of our culture and who we were, that helped me feel confident about growing the business, because I knew what type of people would fit into our culture, so that I knew if they fit into our culture, there was a way in which they would approach their lives and how they would approach their work. And I felt we could scale a business that way. So it really it was my whoopee cushion in some ways. It still is.
Now, hold on. Aaron just talked about culture is the essence of how we scale. Have you thought about that? Have you thought about the culture being the critical element to how we grow the business? Well, the truth is your people are everything. If you want to scale your business, it's because the people have risen to a place of their ability to create value in the organization, their ability to create systems that are scalable, their ability to think and have those decisions, be empowered, trust, communication. All of those things go back to the culture. So what are you doing to reinforce that culture? What are you doing as a leader to ensure that the culture changes as the company scales? Well, that goes back to the foundations. Make sure you don't miss out on that. We've done many episodes here on the podcast, but mission, vision, and values. This episode happens to be about culture. So keep listening. And here's the interview with Aaron. Let me ask you, Aaron, on that, the core values. A lot of companies know the importance of it, but they don't have it as a part of their day-to-day. How are you using that day in and day out to make sure it's a central point of the culture for the business?
Yeah, I mean that's a great question, and I really believe, because I test this all the time. Like, everything that we have built has a tie-in to either our core values, or what we also call the pillars of our culture, which they kind of feed our core values. We have this redwood tree culture that I created several years back, and the essence of that is, I'd seen my first redwood tree forest, probably 10 years ago, maybe a little bit longer than that, and I was just enamored by it. I had never seen trees that big. I didn't, and I couldn't stop thinking about it. And coming back to Cleveland, Ohio, in the Midwest, and realizing that trees don't grow. We don't have redwood trees that grow in Cleveland, Ohio. And then I started to, apply that to business concepts. And at the essence, I believe trees have roots. And just like in a business, I believe the roots of a business are your core values that you've built your business from. And either, whether we know it or not, we are driving our business through values that we believe in, and that make up who we are as human beings, right? And like a redwood tree, while it grows in the Pacific Northwest, the right environment doesn't exist in the Midwest. And so those roots of those trees can't take shape and can't grow into the magnificent height and magnificence of what those trees are. So I started to think about in business that, core values are the roots, and they're really important, but you also have to have the right environment and the right supporting mechanisms, the air and nutrition, to feed those roots so that they can grow. And my belief is that I can grow a redwood tree anywhere I want if I have the right environment for our roots to grow. And so everything that we built, whether it's compensation plans, whether it's competitions, active learning, for example, is a supporting pillar to our roots. So we have to make sure that we're mindful around the learning and development opportunities that we provide our network and all of our operating companies, because that is something that I do believe will grow our roots. Our core values, for example, entrepreneurship is a core value. So you have to take responsibility for your outcomes. That's how we define entrepreneurship. So we believe that if you're going to live in our network, things aren't going to be handed to you. We're going to give you some framework to build from. But at the end of the day, this is your experience. This is your journey. And we're not expecting you to spend a career on this journey. We hope that you do. But this is your journey. And our goal is to give you things that are going to help you take responsibility for your outcomes, help you own your own experience. A supporting pillar of that, our environment, one of it is accountability. And our way we define accountability is through transparency. We want to have a very transparent environment. So we've created business intelligence, and we show you everything that you need to know about what you're doing to help you learn and help you give you the data you need so that you can maximize whatever it is you want to be while you're on this journey with us within a talent launch network. And the active learning pillar helps support that entrepreneurship core value as well. So we've designed a lot of programs that are all connected to either a pillar or a core value, so that we can we really truly are living this redwood tree concept in our business.
Hold on for a second. Aaron just talked about transparency. I've done the research with the founders from the Inc. 500. One of the most important factors to their growth is a sense of transparency. One of the questions that comes up all the time is, how far do you go? Where do you draw the line on transparency? Most of these companies draw the line at what they're legally allowed to share. They don't share salary data. They don't share personal information, but they share strategies. They share financial information. They share so much stuff with you that many of you will think it's too much and too far. I'm going to ask you to look at transparency, what it does, the benefit of that, the way it builds trust, the way it builds connection, the way it builds inclusion inside the culture, Transparency is one of the critical elements. Over 87% of the people I interview say it's either important or very important to the growth of the company. Back to the interview. What is something that you do counterintuitive that you think other companies are doing that you guys either don't do or you're doing differently?
So, the one thing that I would say that we do differently, that we did do differently, is how we even thought about office space. So, headquartered in Cleveland, Ohio, we ended up buying a building back in 2016, and we were really thoughtful of how we wanted this new office that we were going to be moving into, what it would look like. And at the core of this is that we really wanted to emulate and build our culture in how we brought the office space to life. So and we also wanted to be a showroom. As I talked about earlier, we're in the business of matching talent with opportunity with companies throughout the United States. And I think we have to live who we want to be if we're going to represent that to our clients. So when we built the office space, we built it with our culture in mind. We put our core values everywhere, and we have a very open and collaborative mindset because that's part of our culture. And I think the big thing that we did different is that we created 17 different meeting spaces of different sizes, and then we opened it up to the public for free. So we have, outside of the COVID experience that we're currently in, every week we would have different companies use a meeting room or use our big active learning room, which could seat 70 people and is all technologied out. We'd have Fortune 500 companies hold strategic sessions there. Nonprofits. We have a small, what's called the Accelerator Group, with about 50 small businesses with less than $1 million in revenue. Every quarter, 40 or 50 of them are using different aspects of our meeting rooms throughout an 8-hour period every quarter. So that, to me, what I found out, at least in our community, that was something very different. But the reason why we did that is that we want to be a showroom for culture, and we want these companies to come in and see how we've created this space. And I can't tell you how many business owners have asked questions about it. They did an article in the Plain Dealer, which is the newspaper here in Cleveland, Ohio. We've had actually businesses copy some of that, which is the best thing I could ever ask for, is when people start to emulate our space by redesigning it into their own space. So that was something that was very different that we did around that.
I love that. I know in your journey, Aaron, as a leader, you've been through some ups and downs. You've probably had some defining moments in your own journey. What comes to mind where you had to let go of something, the way you thought about yourself or leadership, that has allowed you to create this company of growth that you have now?
Well, I think one of the things that I've had to let go is ego. I've had a couple of moments where I can think of offhand that really were kind of, that hit me hard, and I realized that I that's not a thing I'm good at. So starting a business at 27 years old, and then growing it fairly quickly, I thought that this was easy. Nothing can go wrong. And little did I know that a lot could go wrong during that time. One of them was technology. I really thought I understood technology. And back in, I think it was 2010, I decided to try to help build a technology with a company that was looking to design a new staffing software. And we were going to be a beta on it. And, we're roughly a $40 million company with about 70 employees at the time. And this was not a proven technology that had worked. And fast forward 8 months into that project of starting to use the technology and getting off of our old version of what we were using, it wasn't working. It wasn't working at all. And we had to start rethinking it. We had to start doing a lot of work manually, and we had to show a lot of grit in that moment, because it wasn't doing anything of what we needed to do to be productive, including even being able to do payroll at a time. And we're basically, we run payroll right now for, think about it, we run payroll for up to 3,000 or 4,000 people a week. And imagine if you can't run payroll, payroll's not working. Suddenly you got to pay all these people. They're going to be really angry if you don't pay. So I had sometimes those 2 weeks that I can remember we had our whole accounting staff working till like 3 or 4 in the morning to try to get paychecks out. And it was a $500,000 issue that ended up happening because we had to scrap the whole thing. I didn't have a technology professional on staff, and I had just brought in a board of advisors to my business, and that was the first meeting. One of the advisors was looking at all the information I'd given him. He's like, "Well, who's your technology person in your company? You say you're this technology enabled company. Who's running your technology?" And I looked at him, and it was an aha moment for me. I'm like, me. And that was right around the time where I'd made this $500,000 technology area. And I recognized at that moment that I'm not good at everything. And ever since then, I've been incredibly mindful about that and knowing what I'm good at and what I'm not. So even in our current journey now, probably about 2 years, roughly about 2 years ago, I started to realize that I am an entrepreneur. And as that was right when we hit $100 million in revenue. I'm an entrepreneur, and I can't help but think of the next big idea. I can't help of innovating an idea or a thing that's something that's already working, but I want to make it a little bit better. And I started to create confusion in the company because of all these ideas that I wanted to kind of make happen. And when you get bigger, it's harder to make those ideas happen in the business. And because I had recognized the mistake that I made around the technology a few years earlier, I realized that I needed to bring in a president for our company that actually had passion for running a larger organization and knows how to execute things, and actually force myself to get out of the way. And so I hired a president. We ended up making the hire a year ago. His name's Doug Dandurand, and he's been absolutely phenomenal. And I was forthright with him too. I said, listen, these are the things I'm worried about myself as you're coming into this, that I'm going to screw up, and I'm going to and then when I do, just let me know. And so he's been really great about that. And it's really been helpful for me to know that I know what I'm good at and I know what he's good at. And together we make a great team.
Well, I appreciate you going there with us about ego. I think a lot of leaders, even myself, have struggled with that, thinking that we know the right path. It takes a lot of humility to be able to make the transition and realize that we've got to step out of the way. So there's a lot of lessons in that. Aaron, I really appreciate you being here on the podcast, sharing your journey of leadership and fast growth.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Great interview today. Love getting into the details of what makes us leaders. What are the things that we're missing? How do we put intention to the pillars that allow us to grow and really serve our clients, serve our customers through these pillars? Love this conversation with Aaron because it gets real for a moment where he talks about the ego getting in the way. He lost $500,000. If you lost that, would your business survive? Hopefully it would. But the reality behind this is we all get in our own way at some point. We all fail to evolve past these moments. We can't see it for ourselves. Those defining moments are exactly where I come into play. I'd love to help you through anything that you're facing, any kind of crisis of confidence or courage, or just maybe there's a new strategy that's necessary for the business to continue moving forward. I've spent the last 20 years honing my strategy skills, the last 8 working as an executive coach in the mindset of leadership and how we must grow. Those defining moments define who I am and who you are as a leader. I'd love to help you. Make sure you reach out to me, gene@genehammett.com. Remember, this podcast is for founders and leaders that want to be better leaders, want to be visionary. If you know someone in your network that would appreciate these interviews, the depth we go, make sure you share the Growth Think Tank podcast with them. As always, lead with courage. We'll see you next time.